Hi, my name is Stephen Tronichek, and I'm with HorrOrigins.com. HorrOrigins is a website where you can find articles, reviews, and interviews. We also run our very own film festival and screenplay competition. Today, I'm talking with Brandon Christensen, the director of two very good, very solid horror thrillers, Stillborn and Z. Thank you for being here, Brandon.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I like to start these things out by talking about what initially got you into the horror genre. So, what initially got you into it?
Uh, I mean, from just like being interested perspective, I think it goes back to when I was a kid. It'd be even just like growing up, you and your friends would always rent, the scariest movie that you could go, could find, go to Blockbuster and be like, hey, what's the scariest film you guys have? And you'd always be kind of disappointed. But going back a little bit further than that, when I was 6, ABC did the It miniseries, which was something that my parents allowed me to watch as it aired for some reason, and that series just destroyed my young mind. And it was literally a period of time from like kindergarten all the way until the 8th grade when I saw it again that I would have these like chronic nightmares about it, and it was always the same nightmare and everything like that. So I was just, all these through these formative years, I was just very afraid all the time, and just from this one stupid movie, and just growing up and just watching, the slashers and stuff like that. So when I got older and I started to think about making films and stuff, it kind of, I feel like short films, especially where I started, horror really lends itself well to that because you're kind of just, it's like a single gimmick that you can just play. It can be very short. It can just be this thing, and you can just kind of move on. So I did a few horror shorts, and it just kind of made sense to take the next leap into features with horror. But it's something that I've been around, my entire life.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah. That It miniseries, it has so much hallucinatory imagery. Like, yeah, that definitely can see how it would like sneak into your mind
Uh-huh.
or so. Did you ever get like a movie that you weren't disappointed by whenever they recommended scariest movie in the
Yeah, there was
blockbuster?
one. I was just thinking about it. It was at Blockbuster, and it was like, I can't. It was a deep sea movie. I can't remember. My friend and I rented it, and we hated it. It was very campy, very cheesy. It was like, I can't remember. It was just like one of those deep sea abyss type films that was probably, a direct to video type of thing. But yeah, we just remember being super disappointed with it. Um, but yeah, you kind of always went off the box art back then. Like you would see the sleepaway camps and stuff like that. And it just was so awesome. You had the iconic Sleepaway 2 poster with the Jason Voorhees mask and stuff. And you're just like, oh, I can't wait until I'm old enough to rent that because that's fun. And those ones held up pretty good. So I was pretty excited about that.
Yeah, they did. So your films, they tend to focus on anxieties that rise out of raising a child. Both, stillborn being kind of about these new parents with the young baby, and Z being about, hey, the kid's gotten a little bit older now, and I think I saw in one of your interviews were talking about like the kid is bringing ideas home with him or something like that. So, what drew you to the subject matter?
When I was writing Stillborn with Colin, the idea was basically because I had my second kid was born shortly before that, so I had just finished kind of the second time going through the baby phase, and just sort of thinking about all these ideas with my wife, even just like so many of these things like holding a baby monitor and stuff like that, and you just, what if someone came and grabbed the baby right now? There's like all these little benign moments of parenthood that I had been experiencing, and just sort of you kind of take that what if spin on it, where you go like, oh well, what if something happened here? This, what if a kid goes upstairs, my kid goes upstairs, there's this banister just lurking up there, they're probably going to be fine, but what if they did something stupid? And so both the ideas were kind of just like, I just finished the babies phase for the second time before stillborn, and with Z, my oldest son had just started kindergarten, so he was kind of leaving the house, coming back, and there's just this speaking of him, he's right behind me. So he would be coming home with all these ideas and things like that, and it was the first time that we were like, we didn't control for a period of time what he was kind of ingesting, and so there was just kind of that conversation started like, well, what if what if he did something that we really didn't approve of, and it just kind of snowballs into these conversations. And that's pretty much how Z was born.
Yeah, Z definitely. There is one moment with a banister and something that could happen that
Right.
is very, very disturbing. It kind of got under my skin a little bit. It's the sound did a lot in that sequence as well, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And if you have kids, it's totally something that you would know. I don't know if you have
yeah.
kids. Do you?
Oh, I'm 22, so I
Oh,
don't
okay. I can
right
never tell
now.
with the beard.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's a super effective moment, and I think yeah, it really really got under my skin. So
Cool.
your films, they're contained horror films that feature these supernatural elements. So what drew you towards these ghost films or like demon films or so?
Um, I think, horror and supernatural horror, they're kind of a good way to wrap a metaphor for a story around something, like when you can take a real issue, like with Stillborn, we did the postpartum psychosis thing, which is a real thing. And you're able to kind of balance it with a supernatural side of things. So you can kind of, just sort of go back and forth between the two, like, is it this or is it that? And you kind of keep the audience guessing. I think it's, it just gives you a lot of room to play with the ideas. If you just do a straight demon movie or something like that, I don't think that, I mean, there's a lot you can do there. I just think that it's kind of fun to put something personal on it. And while my wife didn't go through postpartum psychosis or anything like that, thankfully, it's just finding out about it, after the fact, and you just go, holy crap, that's like a serious thing. It's just kind of nice to be able to take those things. And I've showed the film to people that have experienced it, and it hits them in a totally different way. And the whole thought was, my wife doesn't like horror films, and so she's tried a few and she just can't do it. So I was just like, well, maybe that this was something that I felt that she could watch because it would relate to her, just as a mother and stuff like that. So that was also a big part of it. But yeah, I just like the idea of just being able to sort of add a layer or two of depth to it by presenting it under a supernatural demon under the guise of something else, like hereditary diseases or things like that. It's just, I think a lot of people in horror are doing it now. It's just a way to sort of just talk about something personal while still scaring people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Something I write a little bit of horror myself, and something that I've always enjoyed about the genre is that you can get away with so much more and
Hmm.
go much deeper emotionally into these
Sure.
things by taking that license and maybe even a little bit of the melodrama of horror and just
Totally.
running along with it. And I think the films are really successful at that.
Cool.
Um, so I love set stories. On-set stories are always very fun, and I like crazy set stories. And there's some very fun sequences in these films. Well, not fun, but scary. And what is a great set story that came from these films?
There's one from each that kind of jump out at me. On Stillborn, there was a small subplot that we ended up cutting where basically, like, Mary in the film, her sex drive starts going like out of control, and it was kind of, as she was taking these pills, and it's some of that was it was some of it's still there. You can still kind of see remnants of it, but we did shoot just a brief sex scene that was in the film. And when we were shooting it, we did the whole closed set thing. It's always awkward. You've got the actors, you've got the minimal amount of crew possible, and it's kind of like a one-er shot that we were doing where she's just aggressively having sex with him and surprising him at the same time. So it was kind of a cool thing, but just, it was the first time I'd ever done something like that. So, it's just, you're like trying to keep the set light and make jokes and stuff like that. And depending on who's in the room, they might not appreciate that, or they will. And there was just like, it was just, it's just something we wanted to get through. There's nothing sexy about it. It's very technical, and you're just like, okay, let's just do this. And like, when kind of things were at the peak awkwardness, there was a knock on the door, and one of the producers just had an Oreo, like a plate full of Oreos, and just handed it to me because, I mean, that's like the one that I love Oreos. And it was just this weird icebreaker that they did. It was pretty funny. Yeah, it was just like, okay, we're making a stupid thing. It doesn't matter. It was just funny to break everything. On Z, the one that I think of the most is after we had already shot the film and everything. The intro of the film where Jet's playing with the toys and stuff like that. That was shot months later. It was at my house, so I flew Jet and his mother to my place in Las Vegas, and we just planned to shoot for a day and just pick up little things, some ADR and stuff like that with him while he was there. And he hadn't cut his hair since the film had started. Like, he had really long hockey hair. And so my normal stylist, the girl that cuts my hair, she wasn't available. So I took him to a local franchise chain, and I had photos of, like, because it's a continuous sequence. He gets up and he goes downstairs. So I had reference photos. I'm like, this is exactly what it needs to look like. And the girl at the place is just like, oh yeah, fine. And she's, she starts cutting and everything, and she's just talking and everything, whatever. And then, I go to answer a phone call, and when I come back, she had cut his bangs just like Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber.
Double stamp. You can't triple stamp a double stamp, Lloyd. You can't triple stamp a double stamp.
Like, just straight across. And I was just like, freaking out. It's a packed place, it's one of those quick turn barber type franchises, and I'm just like losing my mind. I'm like, I'm not paying for this. Like, this is I can't believe you did this. I flew this kid from Canada. He's doing this movie. We needed it to look like this. The manager comes out and she's trying to stop me, and I'm just like, I'm leaving. I grabbed him and I just ran out. And like, the poor kid, he's an actor, but at the end of the day, he was like 9, and so he's getting upset because he looks like an idiot. And I'm on the phone while I'm driving home, and my wife's mom's a hairdresser, and she has like a couple of random wigs in our closet, and she had one that's kind of like a bob, like just this little kind of thing. I was like, get that out. And when we got back, we just like put it on his head and bobby pinned the crap out of it, and just like to try and make it as small as possible. And I have these photos of him, and it looks so stupid, and it kind of changed, it changed the way we had to shoot it, because we couldn't shoot anything with like anything wider than his forehead. But you watch the opening scene, you can't really tell unless you're looking for it, but you can definitely see the fact that he's wearing this stupid wig in a couple shots. It's just, he's playing with these toys, and then when it cuts to when he leaves, it's back to the principal photography. But I just never remember. I'll never forget looking at him and just seeing that horrible haircut. I was so stressed. Oh, it's terrible, but it was funny.
Like on being on set is, I always find, like, looking back on it, I always find it so funny. But then you think about how you felt in the moment, and it's like, I wasn't laughing. That wasn't funny. But those are.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when you're on set, it's just like, the only thing that matters in the world right now is what you're doing at that particular moment, like that scene, that shot, whatever. So yeah, I mean, your focus it's just like this tunnel vision on this one thing, that it's hard to kind of have that wide view of it and just sort of see that it's not really that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. But that's when you need like good creative producers and stuff like that can sort of have that wide scope of everything, because it's very easy to get lost in the weeds, and it happens to everyone. It's just like, sometimes you just need to step back, take a breath, and kind of think about it from an analytical perspective rather than like an emotional one.
Right. Yeah, those are some great stories. I mean, I haven't heard anyone talk about wigs or hair or anything like that yet, which is such a vital part of this. And so speaking of the kid, you have some very good child actor performances in your films, including that kid in Z. What are your recommendations for working with child actors?
I've done it a bunch with commercial work and stuff like that. And I mean, we got super fortunate with Jet because he came out of nowhere. Like we put up an initial Facebook posting for the movie, just saying like, we're going to be shooting in Calgary. These are some of the parts that we're looking for. You can email us at this number or at this email address, and you don't really expect that much, maybe some background, maybe some smaller parts, but typically you'll go through like a casting agent. And so we just put that up just sort of as a, why not? And literally like 30 minutes later, we got an email from Jet's mom, and it was like a headshot, a resume, and we're just kind of reading. We're just like, Dwayne Johnson, and, he's in The Boy, and it's like, and we're just like, holy crap, what is going on here? Like that was the biggest reservation going into the film was, where are we going to get this kid actor that we're putting a not insignificant amount of pressure on to fill this role. And like literally 30 minutes after we started the search, we already, had him. And we did have a little bit of negotiation just because he was double booked. Like he had us in like a Lifetime type movie where he would have made a ton more money. But this was I think this was a better opportunity for him. So, kudos to all, his mom, his agent and stuff like that for taking a chance on us. And it worked out great for the film because, when we were on set, other than sometimes when it was like past midnight and he was starting to get loopy, for the most part, he was, you're so scared of working with this kid, how you have to talk to him, how to do all that. But he'd been on set so many times, probably more than me, where it didn't matter. You just sort of talk to him. He wasn't a kid actor. He was just an actor. So we got super lucky with Jet. And then on the first film, Stillborn, it was actually my niece that was the baby in it. So we actually scheduled the film around her birth. And it was basically, she was, I think, a week old when we started shooting. And she was there from day 1 till day 20. And my brother or my sister-in-law would just bring her every day at, the time we needed, which was difficult in some situations when it's, you're shooting overnights and you're doing like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And so they've got to be there in that weird witching hour, 12, 1, 2 or something like that. But they, they came out every day and, brought her. We had a stunt baby that we would put in the scene and light with the scene and then just sort of pull her out, put the real baby in, shoot it real quick. But I was just kind of scheduling around it. And with a baby that young, there's no real acting or directing or anything like that. You basically just need either crying or not crying. It's like very binary. So it was actually harder to get her to cry than we thought. So we did end up figuring out how to do it. But a little bit later in the shoot, we would take a cold a cold can of Diet Coke and just place it on her face. And, at first she'd be kind of stirring and irritated, but then by the time, then she just starts blowing up. And so that big scene where she's like, "Shut the fuck up, Adam," that cry was from a Diet Coke can.
Oh dear. I'm guessing you shot Stillborn kind of in continuity then, so that this baby wouldn't get bigger over the period of time.
I wish we had, but we didn't have Jesse Moss until the second week. So the first week was just kind of going through everything with Christy Burke alone, and then the second week Jesse came for the rest of the film. And unfortunately you can never do that. Like we shot the scene with the baby being born, like the very opening sequence. I think it was in week 2, and so she was definitely bigger than she was at the beginning of the shoot. The first shot with her is during the opening montage when she's like cleaning and putting the house together before she goes on a walk. She plops down on the couch and sees the baby. That's like a 6-day-old baby. That's super illegal, but it's family, whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely situations in whenever you're filming where you kind of cut some corners and yeah.
100%.
So I think one of the reasons why both the features work really well is the edits. They're really smooth and engaging, I think. They're like the construction, pacing wise is really, really solid. So it may have me thinking about what is your editing process like, and how do you know how like a moment's landed? And yeah.
It's tough. I mean, if you're in Hollywood or something, you'll have an editor that's doing everything, and then you can test it in front of people and audiences and stuff like that. Be like, oh, this works, this doesn't work, etc. But when it's such a small indie, it's just like a small group of people that are working on it. Like with the first film, Stillborn, I cut half of it, roughly, maybe a bit more. Colin cut the other half. On Z, I cut the full thing, and then and it's just like I definitely learned a lot from that and just figuring out how my style worked and how these jump scares worked. But I mean, ultimately, you just end up trusting yourself and trusting your gut and just watching it a million times. You cut a scene, you watch it, and you just sort of, if any time just something feels a little like you're like, oh, that's wrong, then intuitively you can just kind of know where the problem is and try and fix it. But it's definitely challenging. I mean, especially jump scares and stuff like that, where it's so frame dependent. Like it could be, if you do it a frame early or a frame late, it can really ruin the whole thing. And so it's really hard sometimes just to get out of your own body and just be like, okay, watching it as the audience, this is how the audience is viewing it. I don't remember anything that I know about this film. I'm just trying to, clean slate, watch this moment. And I've gotten fairly good at it, where I can kind of put myself in that position where I can see it like that. But, it's an ever evolving skill where you're just trying to, you're just doing what you think is good and hoping that it's right, because you're pretty much the only person. There's no like executive producer somewhere being like, you don't have final cut. Like, it is my final cut. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I've definitely found that, whenever you're so close to something, the element of subjectivity, where you just have to be like, sometimes you just have to be like, it's good to me. Okay, we'll see how that goes.
I mean, there was a great podcast with Kevin Smith that I heard 3 years ago. I don't know if it might have been Hollywood Babylon. He might have been talking, but he was basically talking about a film he did where the entire crew was university students, and they all wanted to impress him so much, and like they would be beating themselves up so much every day. A prop would come in and it wasn't perfect, and they would just be kind of getting really upset about it, and he would just have to pull them aside and be like, hey, like, we're making a movie. Like, it's not, we're supposed to be having fun. Like, we don't do this if you don't love to do it. Like, that's ultimately what we're doing here, is you want, it's a career, and it's, it's a business at the end of the day, but it's something that ultimately doesn't matter. It's not life or death. It should be something that you enjoy doing, hopefully. Because I mean, if you're going to put yourself in this position, if you're directing a feature or something like that, like the hours are kind of incalculable. It's not like a salary or an hourly job where you're getting like that. It's just, you're just putting your entire life into this thing. And so if you're going to do that, like, you better enjoy it, or else you're going to be you're going to be stressed out. You're going to be losing your mind and all that stuff. So when I heard that, it was kind of nice just to reaffirm that sometimes being good enough is good enough, and that was kind of the message that he said out of there. But I mean, still, whenever you do a first cut and you watch that first draft, you're going to spend like 3 weeks totally depressed because it's awful. That's just how it's going to be. I know that that's going to happen now. So I like schedule that into my plans. Like, okay, I'm going to be depressed for these 3 weeks, and then I can come back and attack it.
Yeah. You mentioned that in Stillborn, you had that whole like subplot that is like excised from the movie. And it just had me thinking about how much of like, these like smooth feeling films that you love are really just like patched together
totally.
improv wise, where like this whole subplot is gone, who cares, it's okay.
Well, and another thing that's funny is like both Stillborn and Z, they were both like, we had a deadline because both of them played at Overlook Film Festival, so we had to get the DCP made. We had to lock things like just to get it to this point so we could play at this thing. And we don't have money afterwards to be like, okay, well, this didn't play right, let's go back and fix it. So we're finishing the movie for this festival. And, certain things happen. Like on Stillborn, for example, there's this scene that's been called out a million times, and it was totally just by accident. Near the end of the film, when she's like fully crazy, I think it's when she sees the vents, the eyes in the vents, but she's laying in bed and you can hear the baby on the monitor, because it shows a quick B-roll shot of the baby in the crib. But that was from a scene way earlier. We just needed to buffer a transition to her being in the bedroom without thinking of the story implications that meant, because everyone's like, if this stuff's happening, why is she not sleeping with her baby? And we had she was on set when we shot it, when we wrote it, everything was, she had the baby with her from a certain point. But when we were editing, we were just like, oh, we need a, baby crying or baby sleeping kind of sequence. So we just grabbed this clip, put it in the thing, and then we didn't think about it again. And so that made the final cut, and it's been called out a million times. And it's like, no, that's not what it was supposed to be. It was a total accident. So that was a bummer.
Yeah, but I mean, the movie's good. I mean, that's I think that's what matters. Like, the movie's good.
Ultimately,
it is difficult to see past things
right.
like that, though. I do know that. So the final question that I like to ask during these interviews is if you could recommend one horror film off the top of your head, don't even think about it, just anything, what would it be for our audience?
I think one that people don't talk about enough is The Gift with Jason Bateman, which is a Blumhouse film. And it's just it's super contained. It's not too dissimilar from, something that I would do, just with like the family element and stuff like that. There's this weird past element where they've lost a kid or something. They've got, baby stuff that they aren't using. And it just sort of has this slow unveiling of a truth. I mean, when I saw the trailer, I was like, this looks stupid, like The Gift. Oh, that's a cool title, whatever. And then you watch it and it's just does everything so earnestly. And the characters are all great. And they, it's kind of like Orphan, where you have this family unit, and then slowly you start seeing in the cracks of them, and they start realizing that these characters aren't who they were initially presented as. And, the people that you kind of once thought were the heroes are real, they kind of have their own darkness to them. And I really, really connected with that. When I actually cut Stillborn, I used the score from The Gift as a attempt for it, because it's a great score. It's super cool. But yeah, that's a great film. It's one of those ones that you don't want to talk too much about, because it goes to some pretty dark places, but it's just super well made. Joel Edgerton directed it. Yep. And he's done one other film that I've never seen since, and I'm just like, he did a great job on that. I'd love to see more from him. I guess he's just on the one. I've never seen it. It's got Kevin Costner in it, I think. Or
was it Boy Erased? Russell Crowe and Nicole Kidman?
Russell Crowe.
Yeah, I think Joel Edgerton, he's a wonderful writer and director. He did it, and he's great in The Gift. I think he's really fun in that. And Bateman is just absolutely incredible in that movie.
He's always great.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that's all the questions that I have. I've been Stephen Tronichek from HorrorOrigins.com. This is a reminder that Horror Origins is a website where you can find articles, reviews, and interviews. And they also run their own film festival and screenplay competition. Just one last thing, Brandon. Where can people find you online? Just a Twitter account or something like that?
Probably just Instagram. It's the Brandon Christensen, just same spelling, BrandonChristnsen. Yeah.
All right. And you can find me on Twitter at STRONICEK. All right. I'm Stephen Tronichek. This has been Brandon Christensen. And thank you so much again for this.
Yeah, for sure. No problem.